Hello, and welcome to the first informal episode of BamboozleCast. My fake name is Pilot.
And my fake name is Snowy.
And recently, as in a few hours ago, we just saw Star Wars The Last Jedi, which was, pretty divisive movie, right?
It was interesting.
It was interesting, to say the least. Goodness gracious, I never thought that a Star Wars movie, of all things, would kick up, like, so much discussion just everywhere. Even people who usually aren't that interested in Star Wars, I feel like everyone had a hat in the ring. Like, everyone had something to say about this movie.
I agree. I'm not even the biggest Star Wars fan, but even I had, like,
You had some
a lot
strong
of opinions.
Gosh, if once you sit through the entire thing, there's no way that you can just walk out of there and be like, I don't think anything. Everyone walked out. I saw the people's faces. Like, there were some happy faces, there were some disappointed faces, there were some I'm gonna go home and type a really long angry rant on, like, my favorite comment section faces, you know. And really, it was just spectacular just how divisive the movie ended up being. I mean, even more so than the prequels. And if you know anything about the Star Wars prequels, you know that there were some hurt feelings about those movies.
Oh, yeah.
So Snowy, like, what were you thinking when you were going into the movie? Like, what were your expectations?
I wasn't expecting much, to be honest, because I've already heard so much from this, and I was just hearing, like, bad stuff, good stuff, and by this point, I just didn't really care. I felt like the last movie, like, I felt like it was the best so far from the new Star Wars.
You mean Rogue One?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, just making sure.
But, even that I felt was kind of bland and boring, so I didn't know what to expect from this. They only come around once a year. And, after a year passes, it's kind of like, you don't really care too much. Well,
You
at least
forget
I
about
didn't,
it.
because I'm not a huge fan.
Right.
But, I'm sure other people were, like, insane.
Yeah. I mean, when I was going into it, I didn't have high hopes. I mean, come on, this is Star Wars owned by Disney. I mean, if you had high hopes for Star Wars following, Episode 6, you were going to be in a rough spot. But it definitely was not what I thought it would be whatsoever. And really, one of the few strengths of the movie was that it had me going a few times. Like, that was a tricky movie at times. I mean, there was seriously one moment where I was like, holy crap, are they going to make Luke Skywalker, like, the actual villain of Star Wars? Like, that caught me off guard, where Kylo Ren was like, he almost killed me or whatever. I was just like, oh my goodness, like, wait, are they really doing this?
I was very confused at some moments, because, I don't know, man, like, it felt like it would be going in one direction, and then we like a 180.
Zoomed right back around, yeah.
I felt like the biggest one for me, at least, or the one that sticks out the most in my mind, was with the girl who was working with Princess Leia.
Purple hair, the Vice
Purple
Admiral.
hair
I don't even know what her name is. Vice Admiral.
They hyped her up to be like this kind of like a villain, They're like,
She definitely wasn't wholesome. Like, she was not meant to be a nice character.
She apparently had this great plan and stuff for
which she never told anyone.
Yeah, she seemed like a jerk, and she seemed like she had bad intentions, and the entire time I was like, okay, well, this is happening, and then it was like, oh no, you are mistaken. She is a good guy.
She was good all along.
Like, how was anyone supposed to know that?
Exactly. Like Snowy, what I was thinking when I was seeing this lady on the screen, I was like, okay, either A, this is an Imperial spy, or B, they're intentionally setting her up as, like, this jerkwad idiot who doesn't know what she's doing, and that's why Poe has to, like, stage a rebellion against the rebellion. Like, That's what I thought they were going for. I thought they were going for this, like, this harsh, uncompromising kind of leader, and then it just sort of fizzled out. And that was a funny thing. That was something our father actually talked about, was how Poe sort of was handed the idiot ball for the entire movie. Mm-hmm. Like, as I recall, there was a point where after they revealed her amazing plan, I looked over to you in the theater and I was like, Poe was so stupid this entire movie. Oh my goodness.
I have to agree. You see, I kind of forgot what had happened in the previous Star Wars movie, but then when I remembered the big role that Poe played,
yeah.
And I was like, hey, this character was actually really good. And
he was likable.
And then he just wasn't memorable in this movie.
Yeah.
And it just, it all fell apart for me, especially the purple-haired girl. It's like, it wasn't some big twist that she was actually good, because there was nothing, like,
there's
possible.
nothing to cast doubt.
Yeah,
there was never a moment
nothing.
where Poe was like, I think she might be working against us, and like intentionally failing or something. I don't know.
Then you never felt any kind of, like, other side to her other than, like,
This
I'm trying to make you all fail and die.
This really flat character. The most interesting thing about her was her purple hair. I was like, when has there been a human with dyed hair in Star Wars? I mean, aside from the Rebels TV show, you know? It felt weird.
Listen to this.
I don't know. It definitely felt like an entirely political thing. But the problem was, I didn't understand what the message was. What were we supposed to learn from that entire B-plot?
Girls are smarter than boys.
Yeah, she was like, I met you hotshot pilots before. Oh, you mean the hotshot pilots that destroyed the Death Star twice and saved the galaxy?
Right.
Those hotshot pilots? Oh, man.
They didn't give her any kind of backstory, too. There was no reason to feel bad for her other than, like, oh, she's gonna stay behind. Like, well, okay, good for her. No one cares. She literally seemed like the villain for, like, half of the movie.
What was hilarious was when she even appeared, they were like, oh, it's you, like the Admiral or whatever. And Poe was kind of like, I'm surprised the Admiral's a woman. I'm like, I'm surprised this character exists because there was no build-up.
I was like, did I miss out on something? Did I forget something?
Yeah.
But it was just some random character. And I was like,
I'm sure if you read the books, it makes sense. Ugh, it's just...
I can't read.
The entire B-plot was unnecessary. Really, if you look at it, everything that Finn, that terrible Rose character, and Poe did was completely useless. What did they do? They go to the ship, they try to deactivate the thing so they can't chase them anymore, but by the time they get there, the ships have already been blown up, so there's no chasing, like, at all. It was pointless.
It wasn't good.
The ship blows up, too, anyway, doesn't it? Like, Snoke's ship explodes, so it's like,
yeah.
What was the point of that?
I also do not like Rose too much.
We had to talk about Rose.
At the beginning, I was like, I don't mind if they put in new characters. I really don't mind, but like, they gotta make him interesting, or they have to play a role that makes me like them or something. Or
they have to have a likable quality, and really, she just seems so like generic, like off-brand, spunky mechanic character. I couldn't get behind her.
I was telling Pilot, I was like, I get that she has skills in like the whole mechanical area and stuff like that, but. And how in the world does she, like, fight all these people?
She has all this heroic, like, action hero stuff come out of nowhere.
It makes no sense. Like, for, Finn, I'm gonna call him Poe. For Finn, it's understandable.
Right.
But for this character, Rose, like, I mean, there was no real reason the way she acted the way she did.
Right. What was worse for me was, it seemed like, I know you haven't seen the TV series, Firefly, but there's a character in Firefly very reminiscent of Rose, or I should say Rose is very reminiscent of her in a bad way. Like, she's like a bad copy. And that character, as I recall, she was a lot like Rose. She was spunky, she was a mechanic, she had a little bit of hero worship going on, she was kind of naive. But the difference was, she was likable, because you had lots of episodes to get used to her. But in here, she was just sort of thrown into the story. In fact, we actually joked that she seemed like someone's self-insert fanfiction character.
She did, yeah.
She gets to hang out with all the cool characters like Finn and the gang, and she gets to help them go places, and she has some weird...
She has a sad backstory.
She has a sad backstory. It's like, oh, I lived on this planet. Who cares? I don't know you, lady.
And what are the chances that the planet she grew up on is the
one
exact one they need to go to?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not saying they shouldn't have done that, but they shouldn't have.
She could have been an interesting character, but honestly, I was so much more interested in Rey and Luke and literally anyone else that I didn't want her in there. And then, the worst part was she could have had like a character saving throw at the end where the fans are like, oh, maybe she wasn't so bad after all. But no, her final action is to stop Finn from like, killing himself by blowing up the cannon. And... yeah, okay, from a story perspective, it was good, because Finn didn't need to do it, but if they'd written it in a way that was Finn's, like, that was him going out, like, one glorious, like, blow up the mini Death Star cannon, save the rebels, like, give them enough time to get away so Rey could help them out, that would have been something. That would have been interesting.
And then she just kind of zoomed in from nowhere.
And then kissed him.
I absolutely hated that, because, like, she got hit up in, like, her like little ship or whatever.
Yeah.
And she's like all hurt and stuff, and she's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna kiss you." Like,
yeah.
Why?
It felt awkward.
I was saying, like, I'm not, like, a shipping person or anything like that, but, it just didn't feel right, because they had a kind of a relationship going on between, you know, Finn and Rey.
Yeah.
Even if it was just gonna be friendship, like,
yeah.
you know, well, no one knows at this point, but it was working out, and then they just shove Rose in as, like, this kind of, like, she's a friend, and then, now she's a love interest, too, and it's like, why would they do this? Why?
Like, she secretly loved him the whole time. I thought she just liked him because it was hero worship. In fact, that was what the entire first scene was about.
She was like, you're the hero and stuff.
Honestly, I would have rather seen the adventures of Finn and Poe, because they actually had some good character dynamics in Force Awakens, as I recall.
They keep referring to each other as, like, you know, good friends, and, you know, they're always trying to help each other out.
But they never chill.
They never hang out, and it's like, you guys are great friends. You don't do anything.
They talked to each other, like, twice over the communicator, and it was like, hey, Finn, how you doing? He's like, not good, man, and that was it. Like, that was the extent of their character interaction, which was a big letdown, to be honest.
It was just... Oh, goodness. And then they were hyping up all the stuff between Rey and Kylo Ren. And for a moment, you know, I was like, oh, this is going to work out. They're going to become good old buddies and they're going to beat the bad guys. And then nothing like that happened. I didn't understand. Kylo Ren was like, we can create our own world.
I can show you the galaxy. Yeah, I don't know. That was terrible.
And then she, like, lingered there for, like 5 minutes. Like, what do I do? Let's break this lightsaber.
Should I join with this guy who murdered all those, like, Jedi trainees? Yeah, I don't know. That whole conflict felt really forced. And then Snoke was like, I connected your guys' mind. Like in Knights of the Old Republic, you have a bond. And it was like, Snoke, but why, though? Like, he gave some half-hearted explanation that it was all, to manipulate Kylo Ren. I was like, you're his master. He doesn't get to talk to anybody else. You can't manipulate him enough by just, like, using your dark force powers. I was like, what element did Rey bring in that you couldn't? I didn't understand that at all.
Kindness.
Real quick, non sequitur. Can we just talk about the scene where Kylo Ren was standing there, like, the third time he was talking with Rey, and he was shirtless? Did he look a little bit wide to you?
I looked over at Pilot, and I just did my hands in a motion. I went, he's a square.
like Snowy. He's not even fat. Like, I'm not laughing at him because he looked fat. He looked wide. Like, someone digitally stretched him.
He was the Chad Kylo Ren. I don't know, man. Like,
I was not expecting that like, build, his physique.
That scene in general was just... I felt awkward watching that. I felt like I didn't need to see this. I
felt embarrassed.
I had secondhand embarrassment watching this man take off his shirt.
Like, look, I know they were trying to show that big, nasty scar that went down from his eye to his stomach, but I was like, really? You had to show him standing there with his big, weird, unnatural proportions?
It's not his fault. He's a wide boy.
He looked like a rectangle.
It looked like someone photoshopped. Like, he just...
They're like, you know what Kylo Ren needs? More muscle mass. I seriously thought he was a skinny dude. He looked skinny everywhere else.
Exactly. I swear. They must have done something.
They did something.
Him. There's no way this skinny boy just, like, stretched his hips out.
Kylo, are you okay?
He's not.
Okay. But talking about people who got messed up in the body, man, Snoke got axed. He was dead.
I remember when part of his body just, like, he got split in half and part of it, like, fell out of the chair or whatever.
Yeah.
I just heard our mom, she's like, like, she was scared. I was like, it's not that bad. It was kind of weird, though. It felt like...
It was a cool scene, but it felt too early.
I felt like I was watching, like, a YouTube parody, and, like, you know, they slice someone up, and then their body kind of goes out like jelly, you know?
And it kind of flops. Like,
yeah.
Why did they make him flop? Like, they could have done something cool, like, with Darth Maul, where, like, his body just kind of folds in on itself. But he, like, seriously, his torso was just, like, bleh. They even had a close-up of his face with the tongue sticking out. I was like, is this a joke? Like, am I being, like, joked with right now?
You're being joshed.
I was getting joshed real bad.
This whole movie had me joshed, because it fooled me into thinking it was good, and then you realize it's not that good.
It's not good. The thing is, my ultimate position on the movie, I was going to build up to this, but I didn't hate it. It had flaws. It had flaws out the wazoo. Like, we're talking more flaws than even some of the prequel movies, which is saying quite a bit, because the prequels were quite embarrassing for the most part. But really, when you finish watching this, like, at first you're like, oh, okay, wow, that was entertaining, that was kind of exciting, and then you're like, oh, but man, why was Poe so stupid? And it was like, in fact, why was that whole plot there? And it's like, why were there so many jokes, even at moments when like it completely ruined any dramatic tension?
I have to say, there were some pretty bad jokes in this.
Yeah.
But it didn't really bother me too much. But the one joke that made me, I think, the most angry.
Yeah.
Was actually in the beginning.
Oh,
where
yes.
Rey is handing Luke the lightsaber and it's playing this really epic music, and then he throws it over his shoulder.
Yeah.
Like, they could have done anything else, and I know, like, they're trying to be like, oh, like, he doesn't care, and look at this, it's funny, guys, it's funny, he's throwing the lightsaber.
Yeah.
Look at that, but it was like, it's not really funny.
I thought it was going to build into something more serious. Like, Luke always was talking about rejecting the Jedi teachings, or, like, letting the Jedi die, or whatever. So I was like, oh, he's throwing away the lightsaber because he doesn't care anymore, and it's like he doesn't want, like, force powers, or maybe he thinks the lightsaber is evil. Like, you know, maybe he had second thoughts about lightsaber combat in general. But no, it was just a one-shot gag, really. Like, he just let Rey carry it around.
It made me so mad because the jokes were so bad, and yet everyone was just dying in the theater.
Yeah. The worst part for me, out of all the jokes, and there were some bad ones, like, I'm talking moments where it felt like they could have just had it as it was, and the dramatic tension would have been so solid. Like, they had something going there. But the worst example was the very beginning, where they were talking to the General Hux guy,
yes.
and he was like, General Hux, like, I can't connect to you, or whatever. Like, he did it, like, 3 times, and then he made a your mom joke, and it was like, oh my god, this is Star Wars.
The ultimate, like, rivals. I can't hear you.
And it was like, General Hux in general got kind of screwed. General Hux in general. He got screwed over during the movie because it seemed like he was being built up as this kind of scary fanatic, like this Nazi general kind of guy, but really he was just a gag. Like, he kept getting thrown around and beaten up, and people were laughing at his mom, and it was like, he wasn't scary. He wasn't a bad guy. He was a goof.
He was a weasel.
He was a weasel.
He reminded me of a weasel, and then he also reminded me of that guy from Les Mis with like the really nasty like orange sideburns. And I couldn't decide which one I liked more. They were both so fitting.
He was a pretty miserable character in general, if we're being
and
honest.
He made me so mad because at one part Kylo Ren's like, we have to go after them. And he's like, you're trying to control my army? Like, do you not see what just happened?
He got punked by Kylo Ren, too. He was like, I'm in charge. And then he got beat up once, and he was like, oh, I guess not. I was like, dude, did you literally forget that Kylo Ren has force powers? Or I just don't know.
He tried so hard.
He tried so hard. But the worst part is, it starts off with a joke. And look, the thing is, we talked about this. I mean, we've called it, like, the Marvel effect, kind of, stuff like that. There's a lot of people online who have, like, called it the Marvel Cinematic Universe joke thing. Which, when it first started, it was kind of revolutionary, because before then, superhero movies were this kind of they were either this serious affair, or they were more like Batman and Robin, like, slapstick kind of, you know, silliness. But when you started having movies like Thor, which eventually led up to, you know, one of the most recent ones, Thor Ragnarok.
Even Captain America had some...
It had some jokes.
It had jokes.
They were good jokes, though.
Yeah, like, I remember...
They weren't mile-a-minute jokes. That was the thing.
I remember the one joke that was really funny was when, in Captain America, it's when he's hyping up the whole, like, superhero that he is.
Yeah.
And, you see him, like, at all these little, like, singing plays and stuff.
Yeah.
And all people are dancing.
Oh, yeah, the like, he's doing the touring for the war effort.
It was actually, like, funny.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that scene.
Because the comedy wasn't all just quips and one-liners, which is what most of Marvel's comedy is now. And, you know, full disclaimer, I like Marvel movies. In fact, we both do quite a bit. But
their jokes...
The oversaturation.
Like, a lot of the jokes were, like, situational, and it was stuff that you could actually kind of see happening in real life. It was...
Yeah.
I'm not saying that all jokes need to be, like, realistic or anything, or, like, they have to apply to real-life situations, but it was a lot better because it showed that there's actual, like, humor throughout everyday life, and not just, like, all humor is, like, one-liners and, like, witty jokes,
That's the thing. My problem was so many quips, so many. How many of those were actually necessary? I mean, there's the part where even Luke walks up to Leia, and the first thing she says is she's joking. She goes, you know, oh, I know what you're going to say to me. I changed my hairstyle. Look, there was a good joke there. In fact, I laughed a little bit. I mean, that was a good joke. And
I feel like
it had a place.
It was more, it was kind of heartwarming. You know, it's like these siblings who haven't seen each other in a long time, and then it's like, you know, they're just kind of joshing
But the
around.
problem was, that was it. It was a scene where siblings who haven't seen each other in a long time, not just any siblings, mind you, and a super important, like, politician, revolutionary leader, and the greatest Jedi of that time, you know, they meet up, and the first thing is a joke, and you could see, if that was just the one time it happened, it's whatever. But it happens so much throughout the movie. I feel like it just lessens the dramatic tension in so many scenes. I mean, even in Rogue One, like Darth Vader made like a dad quality joke while choking director Krennic or whatever. He was like, "Make sure not to choke on your aspirations." I was half expecting like a laugh track after that. Like, is this even Star Wars? They're just taking a page out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is not inherently wrong. I like it when Thor Ragnarok did it, but that was a different movie.
Exactly. Jokes definitely have their place in certain movies, especially like you said, the new Thor movie that came out.
That was a good example.
That was definitely good because, originally Thor was always a good movie, but it always felt like kind of like the bland superhero kind of movie, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
So it felt like very refreshing. They give Thor the new haircut, they put in good jokes, and there were like funny scenes,
good acting, yeah.
And they also balanced it with all like the really good fighting,
the action
and stuff like that.
The story. And look, no one goes to a Thor movie for the deep story, and the same for Star Wars. No one wants to go to a Star Wars movie and see the deepest lore. Like, if you want that, you gotta either read the books or play the games. Well, some games, but
Lego Star Wars, everyone.
Deepest lore confirmed. But yeah, the jokes, the quips, they killed me. They really did. It felt like it was in a different movie. I felt like I wasn't watching Star Wars. And
I'm sorry, but
yeah,
I thought the jokes weren't that bad. But then once I left the theater, when I would be thinking of a certain scene from the movie,
right?
And all I could remember was the bad joke they said.
Was the bad joke,
or the bad, like, I'm gonna punch you in the shoulder and you're gonna fall down, and just the bad jokes. That's all I can remember. I remember the part where Kylo Ren, he sees Luke walking up and he's like, we gotta shoot him and stuff. All I can really remember that they said from those scenes were like, oh, do you think you killed him?
Yeah, which, like, to be honest, that was a good joke, but I felt like that deserved to be in a blooper reel, not in the movie proper,
It's just not fitting.
I know that we're harping on this subject quite a bit, but honestly, when you start rewatching these movies and you really look at it, it does feel like the jokes take away from a lot of the serious moments.
And just not just Marvel and Star Wars, but like
a lot of movies do this now.
A lot of movies, they're like getting on this like bandwagon, like, let's put all these little jokes in, and it's like they just don't become funny little jokes anymore. They become annoying little, quote unquote,
they absorb
jokes.
parts of the movie. You gotta let the movie be serious at times. There's gotta be times where someone, dies or someone gets hurt, or I feel like, and they know what they're doing most of the time. They let those moments happen. There are like genuinely sad moments and important moments or stunning moments, but it feels like so many times they have these perfect things set up, or almost perfect scenes set up, and then a joke just completely, like, it takes away the inertia, the momentum. Everything just comes crashing to a halt because of a stupid joke, when really we should be feeling the emotion of the scene. And I know that sounded extremely pretentious, but
it's true. I feel like when you're watching a movie, the number one result should be you feel a certain emotion in each scene,
right,
that's trying to portray it. Like, if a certain scene is supposed to be sad, you should be feeling, sad.
Of course.
And if you're watching something that's obviously going to make you angry, you should be feeling angry.
Right.
And I'm not saying that every person has to relate to this, but like, it's very annoying when there's a scene and it comes in and it's like, it's this, the really sad scene, as he was saying, and then it's like, it just does a 180, and it's like, it's a funny scene now. It's like,
it's mood whiplash. And
you had me feeling sad.
Exactly.
And now I'm laughing at a joke that isn't even that funny.
Or I'm not even laughing, because sometimes, look, I'm not saying the jokes were bad. I mean, your mom jokes aside, most of the jokes in the Star Wars movie were actually kind of good. Like, I mean, yeah, they weren't like burst out laughing good, but I chuckled.
There were some where, as I said before, like, did you shoot him down? Like, I was just kind of like, ugh.
You're just like, why? Yeah, you gave me the aside glance a few times. I was like, not enjoy that joke. But yeah, there were like you said earlier, like, some of the jokes just did not work, Snowy. But honestly, it killed quite a bit of the movie, but it could have been worse, I suppose. Really, the entire movie just felt inconsistent, and
it did.
We know why now. We didn't know why until earlier, but now we do. And actually, I didn't know this going into the movie, but like, the writer and the directors changed. Force Awakens was J.J. Abrams directed it, and he wrote it along with 2 other people. This time around, it was given to some guy named Rian Johnson. He wrote it and directed it. And I was like, okay, Rian Johnson, who's that? I looked at his list of credits. Nothing recognizable. Like, seriously, it was like 2 movies. It was like some crap in 2008, some crap in 2012, and then it was like Star Wars The Last Jedi. I was like, what? This is such an increase in the importance of his work. I was like, why did Disney give the movie to this Joker? No one knows who he is.
And he did a pretty bad job at writing the movie.
I hate to sound negative, but yeah, he did.
He had like no experience, basically.
Yeah.
And it definitely shows, because at least the first 2 movies they made, like,
yeah,
you know, they had some pacing and stuff, and it was actually, you know, working out. But then this movie, it was just kind of like
everything crashed.
And bad writing.
Like, the death of Snoke, it felt like he was not on the same page as anyone who wrote the earlier movies. Like, you gotta remember, 3 people wrote Force Awakens, right? So they're writing all this build up to the characters, and you feel like things are actually moving somewhere. And then Rian Johnson strolls along, and I don't know. Maybe he talked with J.J. Abrams. I'm sure he talked with him, you know. And maybe he worked on this and that, but then everything just comes crashing to a halt. Snoke dies. Like, what was the point of that? What was the point of even having him? Kylo Ren could have just been in control from the beginning, really. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, that Nazi dude could have been in control.
You were saying earlier about how the rebellion just failed.
Yeah.
Too, and it was just
it made no sense. Because, really, I know the books explain this, but here's the thing. Nobody reads the books. Nobody goes to see this movie reads it. And if you can't explain these things in the movie itself, then the movie is kind of a failure because you were supposed to do that.
Oh, can't you wait for that one person who's going to say, well, I read the books.
No, I read the books.
I read the books.
Well,
I know what's happening.
Here's the thing. If you want to read the books, that's amazing. And in fact, that's great, because then you'll have a better idea of what's going on than the rest of its idiots. But the problem comes when basic questions aren't answered. For instance, you know, it's been like, what, 30 years in between the movies or whatever, between the original trilogy and Force Awakens. How did the rebellion win, but then go back to being such a small and impotent force? Just completely weak. They had nothing going for them. I was like, how embarrassing. Because they beat the Empire. They destroyed the Death Stars. Mm-hmm. Sidious is dead. Vader's dead. Huge demoralizing blow. And, you know, this isn't the Thrawn trilogy, okay? Like there aren't any new Imperial warlords taking over that we know of. Or they don't seem to imply that the Imperials are going to recover from this. And then suddenly you get to Force Awakens, and the Imperials, they're strong again. They have a freaking mini Death Star cannon that they can just drop and use to blow open a door, which is like using a shotgun to open a pickle jar. It's just ridiculous. They have all this money, and the rebels have Jack, and no one came to help them. You remember that part?
Yeah. They're like, we sent out the signals, but no one's here.
I was like, are you sure you sent out the signal? Did you have your finger on the off button? No one came? They saved an entire galaxy. Different races and species and planets. Not one person showed up to help. Not one. Suspension of disbelief destroyed. Oh my goodness. That was a ridiculous scene. It's all because they want to push this, we're the last hope, we're the spark that will ignite the flame.
Stop. They said the word the spark, like 20 times.
This isn't that crappy Hunger Games, like, series. Stop saying we're the spark that will burn the revolution. The revolution already happened. You won. How did you fail so badly that the First Order took over
It's just like, there's so many things that they could have done with the movie, but they reduced it down again to like
the bare minimum.
We gotta, you know, we're gonna push ourselves back up and we're gonna win, and it's just like, we've seen this though.
Yeah, this is the same story.
Like, you could have had literally something new, a whole new thing to go off of, and it was just like, we're the last ones. We're the spark.
We're the spark that will light the fire. Shut up.
Like, what fire?
What fire?
What fire?
My problem was, I even mentioned this earlier to you. I said that it would be interesting if instead of this whole the small rebellion versus the big scary empire thing, if they reverse the roles where the rebellion is in charge and they're bigger and stronger and they have the funding, and then the First Order is the insurgent group. They're the rebels. The bad guys this time are the rebels. And it would have made sense. Kylo Ren's like this kind of charismatic,
emo.
I don't actually hate him, but yeah, he is very edgy. Kylo Ren is like this like shock like team leader guy. He's dangerous, and then you got this Snoke fella in the background pulling the strings, and it could feel like the First Order is actually a threat because they're more like a terrorist organization instead of a full-fledged empire again. And you don't need these dudes marching around in the uniforms. You could have had just soldiers, the real diehard true believers of the Empire fighting back. And it would have been interesting, because instead of all this rebellion crap, it would have been, hey, we have a peaceful galaxy, like, we're almost there. We gotta stop these bad guys from ruining it. It would have been interesting. But no, it's the same thing again.
The writing was definitely just...
It suffered.
It was bad.
Whether you love or hate J.J. Abrams, I think most people will agree that he did a better job with Force Awakens' script than Rian Johnson did with his. I think he even said, he was like, wow, Rian Johnson, it's such a great script. Like, I wish I wrote it myself. I was like, JJ, like, are you joshing me? Are you, joshing me right now? Because, like, like, Snoke just gets murdered and no one explains his backstory whatsoever? That's good writing? I don't think so.
It made me very distressed watching it.
Distressed.
Because my emotions were all over the place. I was like, oh, goodness. I can't even
It's good, it's bad, it's good, oh, it's bad, yeah. Ugh.
There are many, like, for example, the part where, the Luke, a hologram of Luke comes out and stuff, and, you don't know this at the time.
Or it was like a forced projection of him. Yeah,
not hologram.
Hologram.
But,
yeah.
It was very epic. I know I'm saying that word unironically, but it was very epic.
It was well done. Like, the part where he was
scene.
fighting him, but he was literally just avoiding his blows and wasn't even striking back.
And
then, it all made sense in retrospect.
And then he disintegrates, and his cloak just kind of flies off.
He pulls a Yoda and dies, yeah.
I was like, alrighty then.
See, that's another contentious decision. Maybe that could have been handled better. In fact, the whole movie could have been handled better. I guess at the end of the day, when you boil it down to why everyone's arguing, I think Star Wars fans are arguing because they feel like there was a core of a good story there. Like, Force Awakens was shaky. It had problems, wouldn't you agree?
It did have problems, but it was kind of understandable because, it
was a new start.
It was a brand new start for Star Wars. They haven't done movies in a long time, and then it's kind of like they really have to build this movie up.
They were setting up the premise. Finn, Poe, Rey, Kylo Ren, Snoke, all of them were being set up.
And this movie was huge, too. Like, they had to live up to, fans' expectations.
Exactly.
And it was very hard for them to do,
and
but
look,
it worked.
You can never live up to the hype. You can almost never live up to the hype. And no one was expecting it to. No one was expecting the perfect Star Wars movie. I think at the end of the day, people felt betrayed, and that's why they're arguing so much. Because what they expected was a good, or an above-average Star Wars movie. Which I would say, like, Rogue One was a decent Star Wars, and then something like the prequels were bad Star Wars. They weren't expecting the next Empire Strikes Back, but they were expecting A New Hope. They wanted a hope for the series to be good again, but...
We are the spark.
We are the spark that will destroy Star Wars. Oh, goodness.
Rest in peace.
If Disney doesn't pull out, like, a home run with Episode 9... Star Wars is going to be in the gutter, like, as far as box office goes.
It makes me so sad.
Yeah.
And as I said before, I'm not even, like, a really big fan of Star Wars. I've played the Lego games. I've seen some of the movies.
I played the Lego games, so I'm practically an expert.
I know all the lore of Star Wars.
Like, General Grievous, like, man, he was a human, right? But, like with me, I'm probably a bigger fan than you are, and even I'm not like a big fan, Yeah. Like I know
everything.
Yeah, I liked some extracurricular stuff. I like Knights of the Old Republic. I liked the Clone Wars TV series. Yeah.
I do like the Clone Wars.
Clone Wars was good. Oh man, but this movie, it didn't offend me on a personal level. Like if I was a longtime Star Wars fan, I probably would have felt much more angry about this. As it is, I just feel kind of let down. I think that's probably how you feel too, Snowy.
I do agree.
Oh, well. But, it was interesting. I feel, at the very least, this is gonna be a little bit silly, considering all the hate we've been dropping on this movie, but I don't feel like I wasted my money,
I don't either, because even though the movie was pretty bad...
And fell apart.
Yes, I do feel like... There were entertaining scenes, and that's the thing.
The part where they fought the Red Guards, I cannot emphasize how amazing that was. That was well done. I felt like
the whole thing with Rey and Kylo Ren, like, that whole part was like, it definitely, like, failed on some levels, but it was very interesting. I liked it. It was entertaining.
The core of a good story. You could see the pieces sometimes. You could see them surface, but At the end, it all fell apart. Will the next one be better? Will the standalone Han Solo movie be good?
Will they really be the spark? We don't know.
I guess we'll find out in a year. Next Christmas, right?
Next Christmas.
Well, in any case, thank you very much for listening. I know that we're a couple of nobodies, and this was a very informal, out-of-nowhere episode of the BamboozleCast.
That's a horrible name, by the way. I hate it.
Well, at least you don't hate it as much as you hate the Spark.
The spark.
Thanks for sticking around. I'm Pilot.
And I'm Snowy.
And we're out of here. See ya.
Yeet!